TopMedTalk.
Hello and welcome to TopMedTalk. We are coming to you from AANA 2018 Annual Congress. The AANA is the American Association of Nurse Anesthetists, and we are here in Boston, Massachusetts, the birthplace of anesthesia in the Ether Dome. I am now joined by TopMedTalk's own editor-in-chief, Monty Mythen. Good morning,
Morning, Desiree.
He is actually working the desk for us as we've given Nick the weekend off. Monty, how's it going?
Well, you may never get to hear this. It's one of the challenges at the moment. It looks pretty good.
There's some smoke coming from the keyboard over there.
As I said, I'm the world's most poorly paid and underqualified audio technician.
Nick, we miss you. I'm just saying. So we are also joined this morning by Josh Newman. He is a CRNA from the Passavant Area Hospital in Jacksonville, Illinois. And he's not only the chief anesthetist for his group, but he is now the chair for the AANA Enhanced Recovery Shared Interest Group. Josh, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
He's been here with us. We've been talking about the ERAS SIG this morning with Josh and with our other very special guest, Randy Moore, the Chief Operating Officer of the AANA. Randy, thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, we've had some great conversations so far. Yeah. First of all, Randy, I do have one question. How many members do we have in the AANA?
We're just about 53,000 members. And growing at about 2 to 3% clip per year. So every year we graduate plus or minus about 2,500 new certified registered anesthetists into the marketplace and into the clinical setting.
That's good. So we're doing our best to.
we're trying to meet the demand, but I think we're going to talk about the demand globally. But in the United States, the demand for anesthesia professionals it's gone through the roof right now in terms of the supply-demand imbalance.
Yeah.
There's a lot of anesthesia groups and hospitals and health systems really struggling to recruit the talent because of some of the dynamic changes we're seeing in the marketplace. And so I know we're going to talk about the global health crisis relative to anesthesia care and surgical care, but we're feeling it here, and I know Monty's feeling it in the UK as well.
I think there's two aspects to it. One of it is recognizing the fact that the vast majority of the world does not have access to safe surgery.
Right.
So that's the vast majority of people, let alone the anesthesia that goes with the safe surgery. Mm-hmm. And that's as simple as having a boil lanced or having your appendix taken out.
Right.
But for the world that we live in, the very well-resourced world, certainly in the United Kingdom, we're staring down the barrel of a significant provider shortfall. If we just concentrate on anesthesia for a second, we're not sure where the numbers are going to come from.
Right.
Are you feeling that pain here as well already?
Yeah, we're starting to have an acute awareness that the supply-demand imbalance will likely be exacerbated. In the United States, there's so many factors that, as you know, workforce is a complex subject, but if you look at the acceleration of healthcare, the consumption of healthcare by our baby boomers, the silver tsunami, and the urbanization of this country and a variety of other factors, it's pretty clear at this point in time that we should be concerned.
So what's stopping the numbers coming through is what I'm struggling to get my head around, because there's loads of bright kids out there.
Sure.
This is a fantastic career,
absolutely,
whichever direction you come at it from, particularly now we're broadening into perioperative care. Mm-hmm. So why don't we have the numbers? I don't see any shortfall of young kids looking for good work.
I can speak to the CRNA part of the equation, and that we have, and at least the last 10 years, each year have a somewhat modest increase in the number of CRNAs that are entering the market. But we also know that the average age of a CRNA is about 50 years. And that we're approaching a mass retirement. That's a little bit of hyperbole, but not much. So that, and as I said, the consumption of healthcare. Right now we're treading water in terms of the number of providers. But and the physicians are actually, I think their numbers, the physician anesthesiologist numbers are actually older than ours. So you aggregate that out, there's a pretty compelling case to be made that we need to get serious about looking at our workforce needs for anesthesia professionals in this country.
So has there been some protectionism in that? Have we placed our own barriers up to people entering the world that we work in to make our jobs better paid? What's the story?
Yeah, and I'll try to navigate through the political landmines associated with the anesthesia care delivery in this country without raising people's blood pressures too much. But yeah, I think let's look at it holistically, and that's the way I like to have the conversation. And let's take the scope of practice of CRNAs out of the equation and other alternative anesthesia providers. I think at the end of the day, there has to be a realization that there's more work than we have providers. And so how do we work together in creative solutions in a variety of different sectors and acknowledge the fact that there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to anesthesia care delivery in this country, right? So what the needs are in a major metropolitan area are going to be vastly different than what the needs are in rural America, too. So we have to get creative, we have to get collaborative, and I do think that to the extent that regulations are interfering with us providing needed anesthesia and surgical care in this country, we need to have real conversations about that and how do we modernize that and navigate through what is clearly, I mean, our colleagues at the ASA have thoughts about it and we have thoughts about it, but where's the middle ground? So, because there's more work than there are providers, so how do we move forward with those conversations?
Because if we need an anesthetic in a hurry, we don't ultimately have control always of where that happens, whether it's country, nationally, internationally.
I've got so many stories for you. Certainly, right. A high appendix doesn't wait for geography, right?
Exactly. So we want all anesthesia to be provided safely in the world, ideally, but certainly we have a responsibility to make sure that happens in our own nations.
Yeah. Do you think it's a problem with education and providing education in enough spots? Or is it just a lack of knowledge about the profession by incoming, youngsters, as you call them, millennials? Or is it that we are trying to restrict numbers in some of those? I mean, where do you think that's kind of coming from? Because I think you hear about these educational programs, and everyone's like, there are these massive programs that are trying to put out as many people, but then. I know in some of in the medical world and for physician anesthesiologists, they can't find people to fill the spots.
Sure, yeah, and it's not a very expandable process in terms of growing the program footprint on the physician side, which I'll be honest, I'm not that knowledgeable about. But on the CRNA side, it takes 3 years to get a new program up. But it's because we have very stringent standards, right? I mean, we don't just allow someone to put a shingle up and say, now you're a nurse anesthesia.
Or an online only course.
Yeah, we don't do that, right? I mean, there is a level of quality that we insist on, and we're not going to move away from that. But how do we creatively extend programs or grow programs in a way that we're not in any way jeopardizing the quality of the graduate, but still we're thoughtfully and meaningfully influencing the workforce in a way that meets the demand? And that's a really tough question and a really difficult problem to solve, but the AANA has now moved forward. So we just recently approved a very well-resourced workforce program, and we're going to not only hopefully work on addressing faculty shortage and program inadequacies in terms of the number, but also how do we impact the workforce and making sure we're in a more diverse workforce. I mean, you look around at this meeting, we're a pretty homogenous group of people, and we need to work on that. Diversity and inclusion is important to maintaining workforce relevancy. And there's other factors too. How do we ensure that CRNAs in rural America and in metropolitan have the same baseline level of expertise and competency? That's a very complex question as well. But
what is the AANA, just quickly, because I know we only have just a couple more minutes, how are we working on kind of the global needs for healthcare providers and anesthesia providers? Do we have any kind of global outreach that we're doing?
Yeah, that's a challenge in that there is a massive shortage of anesthesia professionals globally, right? I'll give you this, one end of the spectrum is the United States and UK, where we're wealthy countries with a lot of resources. I can tell you when I was in Afghanistan, the medical infrastructure in that country is deplorable. We're talking about people who don't even have an anesthesia professional. They're technicians who are trained on the job, and we interfaced with them when we were there, trying to bring them up to a certain level. But I mean, that's not just in Afghanistan. There's countries all across the world where people are not getting the surgical and obstetric care they need because we can't meet the demand. Now, I think there's a real opportunity for the International Federation of Nurse Anesthetists, the AANA, and our physician colleagues to work on how do we start addressing the global need. And I mean, I don't have a blueprint for that yet, but I think those conversations need to begin in earnest.
Monty, what is your opinion on that, and what's going on from your perspective?
Well, I think one positive movement, particularly from the universities around the world, is to recognise that education should be free and readily available. So the massive open online course movement, which has been very much led by universities in the US as well, differentiates the access to knowledge and learning from getting the certificate.
Yeah.
So you can do a fantastic MOOC, massive open online course at Harvard. Now, they're not going to give you a Harvard master's degree certificate for nothing, but the knowledge, the learning is there. So I think all of our societies, colleges, however we phrase it, we need to get our educational tools out from behind login walls. We need to bring them forward and say, that the learning should be free. Why do we protect it? We shouldn't protect it. We should liberate it. Like we're doing on TopMedTalk.
We do. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our time here that we have with Randy. Any other final thoughts, guys? Josh, I know we didn't talk to you much today, but I know that you live in that rural area and you're servicing a unique environment there. And do you guys have trouble and issues with finding providers?
We do.
Yeah.
We have trouble finding the kind of provider that really wants to and has the skill set to service neonates to geriatrics in all scopes and realms. It's a wide open practice, but it's hard to find people willing to take on that responsibility and that risk level. And most of them end up coming through word of mouth. We don't get a lot of applicants either.
Yeah. So where do you see that changing? I mean, have you noticed more people wanting to come to the area or less in the last 5 to 10 years?
I would say it's really been like Randy said with urbanization. It's been whereas 10 years ago we had a lot more people on the waiting list that were willing to come over. Now it's becoming much more. They'd rather live in that urban setting and maybe make a little less, maybe their scope of practice is a little different than come rural and live really in the sticks. It's tough to bring people into that kind of practice.
Yeah. Takes a special person
yeah,
to
absolutely.
do that. Yeah. All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on TopMedTalk this morning at the AANA 2018 Annual Congress. We look forward to talking to you guys in the future and getting regular updates about the Enhanced Recovery Shared Interest Group and more about what's going on in the AANA. Looking forward to a great meeting this weekend. Lots of great topics, including enhanced recovery. There are a couple lectures on that. And thanks again. Be sure to listen to TopMedTalk on your favorite podcatcher. Catch us on all your favorite social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. And be sure to subscribe to our weekly or monthly newsletter to keep you abreast of everything that's going on TopMedTalk, upcoming meetings, live streaming. Thank you so much and have a great day.
TopMedTalk.